Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your lunch. I did want to tell you about a special program that we have out in the hallway. There's a QR code that you can scan that will recognize your pictures that you've been taking throughout the week. It'll find you through facial recognition and it will give you all of your photos that you've been taking throughout the week. So make sure you scan that QR code to get all those photos. All right, let's talk about money. Learn how to go beyond basic savings with our session on integrating financial education into curriculum. It's time to empower students with essential life skills for financial success. Next up, we have a fireside chat on that topic Beyond the Piggy Bank, integrating financial education into the curriculum. Without delay, let's call our speakers to the stage to inspire and educate us on this matter.
Check. Hello, everybody. And this is everybody. All right, but we're going to have fun all the
Check, check, check,
same.
check. Check, check. Okay.
Okay, just want
Can
to
you
be
hear me?
sure.
Yes.
You good?
We're good.
You're good. All right. Okay, so this is a fireside. I can't see the fire, but no, we'll just create the fire on our own. We're going to be talking about Beyond the Piggy Bank, integrating financial education into curriculum. Um, and we have an amazing session awaiting each and every one of you. But before we do that, can we all just stand? And um, you're gonna try without moving your feet to look at your right as far back as possible. Far back. Somebody just on your heads, the whole waist, everything. Okay, thank you. Let's do the other side and far back as possible. Thank you. All right, and then probably raise the hand as far back as possible. All right. Thank you very much. Let's just have our seat. Ladies and gentlemen, we are three of us going to be talking to you about financial planning and how this is important for the younger generation. Um, there's this definition that I like. It says financial literacy refers to the ability to understand and apply different financial skills, personal financial management, budgeting and savings. Financial literacy makes individuals become self-sufficient so that financial stability can be accomplished. Technically, how can you be financially independent? And that's what all of this is all about. Before we start this, please let me give a little caveat. We're not the regular panel, so we're not going to do things normal way, meaning that we're probably not going to talk first. So I'm going to come down from the stage now, and I'm going to give a mic to somebody. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm still young. I can come down this way. All right. First question. And if you don't raise your hand, I'm going to give the mic to you, whether you like it or not. How many of us have drawn a budget before? Hey, I got one, two, three, four, five hands. Okay. How many of us draw a budget regularly every month? Ah, okay. I like the lady at the back, basically because it's ladies first. I will come back to you. I'm going to stop and just give you the microphone briefly and say to you, when you draw your budget, just generally, what do you do? What's it about?
When I do my budget, it's about taking the expenses that I cannot change and subtracting them from my income and then figuring out what I want to put away for savings and then leaving the rest of my money so that I know I have this what to spend.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give her a round of applause. Give her a round of applause. I'm loving this audience. I'm loving those. Now I'm going to come to you, sir. Very good, sir. What do you do when you draw your budget?
Yes, I do the same thing. I look at what the income is, subtract the expenses, and then I put some for savings, insurance policy, etc. And then I have the living expenses. Typically, college tuition for my daughter. That's my reality.
Thank you very much. Please, can we give him a round of applause as well? Before I get back to the stage, I'm going to come to you, very good sir. Is there a reason why you do not draw a budget? And I want it to be the regular stuff. And tell me the honest truth.
Yeah, I just don't plan one out. Like mentally, I have one, which always doesn't work. But again, I take out the expenses. As soon as I get my check, I take out, rent, bills, and stuff, and then put a little bit away. So I do it mentally, but I don't draw it out and have an Excel sheet or plan it out, essentially.
Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please let's give him a round of applause as well. Now, before we piggyback on what all of you have said, I think it's important that we get to know who these amazing people are who are seated on this on the stage. And I know some of them are dying to respond to some of the things that have been said. So let's start with you, ma'am.
I'm Dr. Jerry Lynn Williams Harper, and I've been an educator for 42 years. I've been a superintendent of 5 different school districts, and there's not a job that I haven't done. However, my least favorite job in education is the chief financial officer, because it's a very difficult job. And what I'm doing now is I run a program for future teachers because if you are an educator, you know we don't have them coming through the pipeline. But most importantly, and what I love the most is I'm involved in a career technical education program, and I am responsible for the work study students. And so work study is all about money, and also teach a special course called Senior Achievement, and they have to do 21 things involving money and what they're going to do before they graduate. And we actually help them build budgets and just so many other things. So actually, when they leave me 6 months from now, they can pull out their folder and go, maybe it's time for me to use this. So I try to do a lot of practical applications with the folks that I work with.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's Geraldine Williams. Alicia?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Alicia Pollard. I am the president and co founder of the awesome Warriors Helping Achieve Triumph organization, affectionately known as WHAT. What is a nonprofit organization established in 2012 with a intent to provide academic assistance to students along with empowerment programs. And then in 2019, we created a financial literacy program for our parents. In 2019, I was in school, completed my research, and we were tasked with identifying a problem within our organization. Initially, our organization was focused on helping students to excel into higher education. We don't call ourselves tutors, we call ourselves warriors, and all of the warriors that are affiliated with the organization have higher education degrees. So we're encouraging students to go to school and achieve those degrees. But a question came up, well, how do I pay for it? What do I need to know about finances? And so from conducting research, I found out, wow, that is very key. You do need to know how to manage your finances, but I also found that parents play a pivotal role in a student's ability to navigate that complex world of financial literacy. So we created a program taking data from pre-knowledge. So what do you currently know about financial literacy? Having parents go through a 5-week program for 90 minutes. They meet each week, and then at the end have a post survey to see if the information that you did receive was beneficial. So we've been doing that. I'm excited to continue to do that. We will have it again in May, and just have the opportunity to be exposed to different financial topics that can help us.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Please give her a round of applause and that Alicia Pollard. My name is Derek Berger. Hmm, my case is a bit different, and that's because professionally I'm an economist. I work with, technically would like to say a bank, but I know that Dr. Jura said I should make it very clear. So I work with the central bank, what you know as the Fed, and we generally just look at the whole economy, and we try to make sure that when it's getting too hot, we calm it down. When it's getting too cold, we heat it up. And we do that with what we call the monetary policy rate, which I'm sure that if you're following the news, you're aware that that's happening right about now. And if I ask, do you know what the rate is? No, let me save you all of that because I have a feeling that you're not monitoring that. And if you're not, then I'm asking myself a question. That rate determines everything. That rate determines who's saving, that rate it determines who's making money and who's losing. In a multi-billion debt industry, um, every one of us is either chasing after survival or we're making money over every opportunity that occurs. So every time the rate goes up, what happens? On which side of the divide are you? Every time the rate comes down, what happens to you? On which side of the divide are you? Anyway, that's what I do professionally. Um, but on the other side, because I grew up with a man of the cloth. It's my dad and my mom. Um, I we were tossed about when we were kids from one church to the other. And one of the things my dad, he was a physics educationist, and he believed strongly in pulling kids, particularly kids who didn't have the opportunity to go to school because for financial reasons. He felt that the church was a very good conduit pipe for making sure that they went to school. So every church he went to, he set up a school for the church. Um, and we were the first teachers. So no matter what you were doing in life, you had to come and teach your course. I taught economics everywhere. I taught maths everywhere. Um, taught a bit of English, but so all his kids ended up first teachers in whichever school we had to start. Then we recruited teachers and then got the place stable, and then he'll get moved. And we get to the new place. What will happen is you then have to set it up again, start the whole process, get all those kids who would naturally not ever get to have the opportunity to go to school to come in for free. He would always say it was for free. The beautiful part of this was that we always felt satisfied or we always felt fulfilled every time the exams were taken and we had close to 98% pass rate. What we were saying to ourselves was that these 20 odd kids or these 10 odd kids, depending on the church, depending on the number of, kids, would never have had that opportunity if we didn't set up that, that educational opportunity for them. So we did this in the whole of Southwest. He had about five, six churches, movements in Southwest of Nigeria. And then at some point, he moved to the Southeast Nigeria. And we started the same thing. And at some point, he became a bishop, so he wasn't moving anymore. He was now moving the others. He then decided to set up a secondary school. And we were all involved again. Now, remember, I said I was an economist. So I was working, but I had to be involved. And this meant checking up on curriculum, checking up on the teachers, checking up on the class experience, checking up on the kids and their what they were achieving at every point in time. You would ask me on the paper it says Bishop Evans Jonathan Iberia Jr. Yes, then the old man had to retire. And when he was retiring, he handed everything, all the schools to the various churches. And we felt it was time for him to own his own. So we all came together, myself, my brothers, himself, and pulled resources together, and he set up a school. That was the Bishop Evans Jonathan Jr. It was the secondary school. But the problem was this: there were no younger ones to feed into the school. So my mom, who's also a professor of psychology, who's also was part of the whole educational system, we then set up the Professor Peace Nursery and Primary School, which now picked them from the early years, trained them up, and then pull them, we moved them into the secondary school. Now, the beautiful part of this was because he was always interested in which kids were not advantaged, he took the school to a rural area, a place where if you do not put a bus, they wouldn't come to school. If you did not give breakfast, lunch, and dinner in school, they probably will show up in school but would not learn. So it's one thing for you to try to get them to school, it was another thing to keep them in school learning. My dad's principle, and it's a principle that we've kept all these years, is we must always make sure that we're generating curiosity amongst these young people, always make sure we're enhancing creativity, and we're always creating long lasting connections among these children. So that's in brief. We started the two schools, but on the other side, flip side, because I've had that kind of background, I've also pioneered two or three other NGOs, and we work or partner with other NGOs. And what we do is that we create opportunities for women, particularly women who are further disadvantaged. So it's not just every woman. It's a woman who's a widow. It's a woman who's an orphan. It's a woman who's had it really rough in life and probably has kids to take care of, but just can't do it. We create an opportunity for them to be empowered, take them through the training process, um, and then we solicit for funds to get them machines, get them equipment, and get them set up and hopefully set up for life. So that's what Eden Foundation does basically, and I'm the founding director of Eden Foundation. I'm also a director of Bishop Evans Jonathan Jr. That's me in brief. Okay. So today I'm here in the capacity of, the social change part of Derek. Leave the economist. I'm going to try as much as possible, even though we're talking about finance, to keep that at the backside of the burner. All right. Um, let's just go straight into it.
Okay.
First question: when were you introduced into finance, financial literacy?
I'm a student who grew up in an extremely impoverished area. I grew up in the projects of Chicago. There was no money in my family. My mom worked a couple of jobs. My dad worked three jobs. And in her mind, the only way anyone was going to do anything, because there were five kids, she looked at me and said, "You're going to college." And I'm like, "Well, okay." College cost a lot of money. And I just remember my parents scrimping and saving so I could go, making sure that I would do well when I got there. And because they had no money, they did understand loans. What they didn't understand was I was going to be a teacher, and I came out of undergrad with debt like this. They didn't see that. They were just proud that I got out of school. So I have always been interested in financial literacy because I think it's quiet as it's kept. We're all professionals sitting in this room, but a lot of us still, if we're talking to our friends, still don't know what to do with our money, how to handle it better. We have people in this room and in this conference who make boatloads of money, and their money is just sitting in a savings account because they don't know that they could be doing other things with their money, gaining interest and investing. Because if you did not grow up in a family that knew about those things, even though you're an educated person, you still don't know. You just know I make enough money to pay my bills. I've got some savings. I can take that big trip once a year, or I can do those special things, but we never really learn how to make our money grow. And our young people right now, our economy is worse than it's ever been. And if you're a parent and you don't know, certainly you can't teach your children. And so that is why many schools across the country now have mandatory, you cannot graduate unless you go through our financial literacy and our achievement. I live in a very rural area, but that's very affluent. I live in an area where there are five gold mines, copper mines, whatever. So I have kids graduating at 17 and 18. They drive 70, $80,000 trucks, and they're 17 or 18 years old. They don't know what to do with their money. They've bought these trucks, they've bought these expensive AVs and things. They've got credit out the wazoo. I also live in an area where our religion, our prominent religion is Mormon. So we have a lot of kids getting married very young. By the time they're 25, many of them have 3 or 4 kids and they can't get a house because they've spent all of this good money that they have made on toys. And so now, what do when you've got a wife that is expected to stay at home? You've got 3 or 4 kids, and you don't know the first thing about money. So, the one thing that we were talking about is we also base our coursework on where we are because a lot of times most people don't really move from where they are for a very long time, maybe 10 or 20 years. So, we teach them about the kinds of things that they should do in the area where we live, how much things are, what's available to them, and so on. And again, our kids will tell you, our parents never told us this. We don't know. I asked one of my students who's 18 who's going to be married and is getting ready to have a baby, and I said, "Well, what are you going to do about insurance?" And they looked at me like, "What do you mean insurance?" And I said, what happens if something happens to your child? How do you bury your child? What do you do? What happens if you're 25, something happens to you, you leave a young wife with 3 kids, and you bought a brand new house? What happens to all of those kinds of things? So, those are the kinds of things that we talk about, and I really believe that students need to know how to do. And we all sat in here and said, we do budgets. But truly, not many of us know how to invest. We look at our young athletes, they come out, they have all of this money that they've never had. Well, we were also talking about finally, when they get that kind of money, a financial planning team comes with, or they would run through it like water because they've never had that kind of money before. So I think that's why we think all of this is so important.
Thank you. So when were you introduced into financial literacy, and was it early in life? Was it further down the road? But please also let me know, has it has have had any implication, on you?
Well, yes. I was introduced to concepts of financial literacy when I was younger. My mother would make different comments, such as make sure you put money away, make sure you are taking additional money out of your paycheck every time you get a raise or you need to, or in time for taxes. Make sure you are doubling up on payments. She would show me how she was able to pay off her and my father were able to pay off the mortgage, paying off credit cards. We're not sending in minimum balances. We're sending in double payments so that we can cut down that time frame. Having a penny bank. So whenever we would have birthdays or I would have money, receive money, I would put some of the money into the bank account or into my piggy bank. When I was in elementary school, we actually did have a partnership with a bank, and each month they would send home forms asking for the students to send money in, and my mom would do that. It wasn't until I turned maybe 19 and I still had a custodial account. And I had to have my mom come into the bank so she can take her name off the account so I can access the money that, although she put the money in, it was mine. So I was fortunate enough to be exposed to different concepts that have stuck with me. And I find that to be a privilege because I can talk to different people and they don't have that same
Mm,
exposure to that. I had an allowance. And because I've always enjoyed having money or being able to buy things myself, I would manage my money so that I could have a little bit. By the time I got my next allowance, I still had a little money left. So it was something that was always embedded in me. But just because you hear it doesn't mean that you actually will take the information and run with it. But I did. And like I said, because I enjoyed learning about money, having money, I would put myself in positions to learn more. I would look at different um, I would read research papers. I actually just read one recently, and it was asking which is better. Do you make an investment based off of the historical projections and the future projections, or do you make an investment based off the fees? And most people may look at it and say, well, if they made 14% over the past 10 years, then that's what I should do. But the thing about the economy and history, it repeats itself. So there are ebbs and flows. And if you have those years where there are ebbs and flows, you are still getting fees taken out of your investment regardless if you're making money or not. So you have to understand from a long-term perspective what's the best choice, and not being exposed to those concepts or critically thinking, which is something that can be introduced at a young age, thinking about topics from a now to long term, delayed gratification, cause and effect. You can make a decision right now that will actually affect you later on. So I embody those principles. I try to introduce the concepts to other people, especially when it comes from investment. You can take $5 and you can put it somewhere. If you saved money, why, like you were saying, why keep it in a bank account? You can put it somewhere else and it can make investments. For with my family, I am actually the family treasurer, and what we do is each month they all give me $200 a month, and at the end of the year, I give them their money back. Now, initially, I was just holding on to the money, but then I said, why not put this into an investment account so that each month it is accumulating gains. Now, those gains, I mean, we benefit from.
You aren't siphoning off money, are you?
Mhm.
We benefit from those gains rather than sitting into a bank account and you may get 50 cents for the year. Something is better than nothing. So I enjoy, like I said, I enjoy those concepts. I enjoy talking about it. I enjoy being around other individuals because there are different concepts that they may have learned that I don't, and I can take that in.
Amazing. And you touched on some very, very interesting parts that we're still going to get back to. I love the sound of compounding, and I'm hoping that some people seated in front of me here have that, at least that knowledge of compounding. Look, if you do, then you understand how to play the market. But now back to my answer to the question. When was I introduced, or how early was I introduced to financial literacy? Now, for me, my background is not in the United States, it's back in Nigeria. So um, I wasn't introduced as structured as you were. I'm the first. So where I come from, a lot of responsibilities thrust at you very early. So the very first house my dad was going to build, and then here you take mortgages out. Where I come from, they dig the ground, you put the block, you see it one step at it, you literally see it until the house comes like, oh, and you remember when they dug the ground, you know. So the very first house my dad was going to build, when I knew him, that's when I was aware. What he did was that every time we always did it was in the village. So every time he was going home to do a phase, it was phased also. Every time we were going home to do the phase, he would take me along. So I'd see him talk to the workers, I'd see him negotiate, I'd see him buy the materials, I'll see him. But for me, originally, it was just watching him do all of that, and I was just following him, and I was having free lunch, and I would go home, and I was like 16. And then he does something very weird, very weird. He then tells me to go home and move the project from a certain stage to the next. And I was blank. What? Yeah. So, you know where we buy this material, you know who to talk to, you know. I had done this trip, say, about five, six, 7 times. I'd never gone to the market alone to buy anything. I'd never negotiated alone. I didn't even know what do you tell the mason? What do you tell I just, and he wasn't joking. All he said to me was, you're going to do this, you're traveling on Friday. I've done your transport, I've done everything. And here you go on planes. We go by what's called the night bus. So you go overnight and you arrive there. Um, so I arrived there with a ton of money. And initially, I would go with the money physically in cash. Yeah. Then you get to the market, and then you have like 100 people in a row, in the straight row, selling the same thing, and you're thinking, how do you decide who to buy from? And you're asking this one the price of this chair, and he says, say $50, and then you ask same chair. You ask the next person, and he's saying $49. So why did this guy tell me $50? Is he trying to cheat me? Oh, is there a problem here? And then I had to say to myself, you need to negotiate. Oh, you need to haggle. You need to Okay, so how do I know that every one of them is not cheating me? Then I would ask from the beginning of the line all the way to the end of the line, then take a decision, then come back and then decide who I was going to buy from. Um, and before, he would give me a list of what he wanted me to do. So I knew I was spending, say, 50,000 on this, I was spending 10,000 on this, I was spending 15,000 on this. So I did that. And then the next phase he'll do is he would say to me, Derek, the building needs to be decked. It will require rod, it will require this, it will require this. Now he didn't give me a budget. He would just say, go. So now I have a pot of money. I don't have it broken down. I then have to go find out, do a market survey, know what the breakdown is, do a quick call and say, this is what they said it was, this is what they said it was, this is it. Yeah, yeah, I trust you, I trust you. Just go. I'm like, huh? Yeah. Then I figured out that I, I could get to the market. You're buying the same thing, I'm buying the same thing. But if we come together and we're buying bulk, the price comes down. And I figured that out by accident. And I was like, whoa, more like partnership. But we don't know each other. So I'd have to go to the market and scout out someone who looks genuine and find out what you want to buy. I actually want to buy 10 bags of cement. Oh, you want to buy 10 bags? Okay, if we're buying, at that quantity, they would actually bring the price down. So we go as one buy, bring the price down. You take your quantity, I take my, put it on a vehicle and go home. And I learned something. Oh, together we could actually get the price down. Ooh, I never knew that before. You know, so I learned that. I learned how to budget because now I had to put the money into different breakdowns and all of that. Um, the house is built. I hope he's not seeing this, but that house has sentimental values to me, and it's it's not about anything. It was just the fact that I went through all of that, learning how to take care of money, how to plan money, how to manage money, um, very unconventional way. So that's me and my introduction to money. But guess what? There's still a lot I didn't know. I didn't know about investments. I didn't know about interest rates. I didn't know about personal savings. Remember, I was spending his money. I was budgeting on his money. I was doing deals with his money, not mine. I will still get my money and blow it. So the only thing was when that house got to a point, it now said to me, Derek, you want to own your own one day. So I was having an idea. I'm going to need this amount of money. I'm going to need this amount of money. I mean, my money was very small, but I just felt that if I kept going, I would have mine one day. So instead, I had to then learn at a much later age about investments, about growing your money, about compounding. Now, I learned this at a much, much older age. I asked myself, if I had started earlier, where I am now, I would have moved way further. Um, but we will get further into it. Let me come to you and say, in the school system today, she spoke about how she was introduced. You didn't say anything about school. You spoke about how you were introduced. You didn't say anything about school. I think I've just spoken too long. Did I say anything about school? No. Let me just ask. Was anyone introduced into financial literacy in the crowd but from school? Oh, amazing. In school, high school. Can we just hear a bit of your experience for like a second before we come back to the stage?
My mother told me to take bookkeeping. She ran my father's office herself, and she had me take bookkeeping and business law in high school. Well, and so then when I had the opportunity to be hired to run a store on Union Square in San Francisco, a year after I graduated from college, I had the capability of managing the books and the knowledge of how to run a business. And
That's impressive.
and that took me further to my work now in empowering women and the contribution women make to business.
Thank you very much. So let's come back to where we are coming from. Um, so school has
Yeah.
School failed you. School failed me. School failed her.
Well, but I want to add, depending on where you came from, your neighborhood, and what you know, because most of us have pulled ourselves up by our bootstraps. But I want to say her mother was fortunate enough to be running a business for her dad. Not too many people were doing that. So her mother knew that that was a skill that she had to have. But my dad had a small business, but it was still hand to mouth because we just never had any of that and never had any of that understanding. And I think even as adults in this room, 95% of us don't know the value of our money. And, when I talk to my kids, we start to talk about retirement. And I'll have kids say, "Yeah, I make $100,000, so I'm going to have a good retirement." And I say, "You're going to retire on $100,000?" And they said, "Yeah." I said, "Do you understand what retirement means? Do you understand what Social Security means? You're going to get a third of that $100,000. Are you prepared for that? What happens when you come to Vegas and you win $500,000? What do you first think of? All the things you can do. You get somebody come to Vegas, they win $500,000, they win $1 million, they want to go buy a eight or $900,000 house, but they only make $40,000 a year. So now they bought the house. What do you do after you've paid for the house? How do you upkeep it on your $40,000 a year job? So really, technically, most people if you're sitting on the train or at your job, right or left, people that make good money don't know what to do with their money, don't know how to handle it, don't know who to talk to. So we say to you, as educated people in this room, that's something that you need to advocate for in your communities, in your schools, and with your own children. Because even though my dad had a business, we never had that talk. And most kids today, how do they go to school? They go to school on scholarship. Most kids that graduate from college have anywhere, because a lot of folks go to graduate school too, 30 to $200,000 of debt. So you've got all this wonderful education, you make a decent salary, but when the Fed is saying you need to pay me 15 or $1,600 a month for that money you borrowed, why did I go to school and get all of those degrees? And so we really need to let our students know. And another thing is that we need to live a little bit under our needs. So we'll always have things, but honestly, we don't do that because we live in a society that says spend, spend, spend. I live here in Vegas. I watch people go, "I brought $2,000 to spend with me while I'm here," but they're $5,000 in the hole by the time they go home because they don't understand that the machine and the algorithms are smarter than your gut feelings. So, money is a huge deal, and I think probably most of us in this room would be better off if we'd had a course, if we had a bookkeeping course, or if someone had really talk to us now. So it makes me feel very proud that I'm working in a school where you can't graduate without uh, that kind of material, and that we actually send you out with the plans that you've made when you graduate so you can open it up and say, maybe this wasn't the job that I thought I was going to have or the kind of money, but I know how to make a budget. I know what to ask. I know about insurance. I know whether my husband should take insurance from his job and I should take the insurance from my job because it's free for both of them. We really have to teach our kids that because a lot of times people are sitting in this room, we're going to be at the mercy of our children. So you you want them to handle your money well.
Let me tweak this a bit. Now, the data states that 8 in 10 kids are agitated around the issue with money. Um, the out of school debt now is in trillions. about 60% of Gen Zs by 18 have maxed out 5 credit cards. This is all data. And this is happening because somewhere in the education system, something has gone wrong. So, this is what I want to ask you. And I want to hear your thoughts on this. What exactly do you think we need to do, in school to make this real, to the kids?
Well, I would first say that the individuals who are leading the initiatives in school should be educated. Financially educated people can help to educate other individuals. I think it is redundant if you are tasking a teacher to now teach another course that they don't feel confident in, leading a group of impressionable minds around a topic that maybe they go home and stress about. So if it's not something that an individual is confident about, it's okay to say, I need more information and bring in experts. We also want to somehow bring in the parents into the process, because how can students go home with additional questions that may not be answered by the teachers, feel comfortable having a conversation with their parents when they lack the ability to even continue that conversation? So it's imperative that it's a full cycle that people are educated in. And that's what we're focused on. We want conversations to happen at the dinner table, at the kitchen table. We want the kids to feel comfortable enough knowing that their parents, they may not know everything, but they are steering them right. We want the students to feel comfortable in school knowing that the teacher is laying out a plan of action that they can use further on down the line, because financial literacy is not something that once you graduate from high school, as you can see with data, it goes away. No, as you get older, it's still around over and over. And even past the time with you no longer being on this earth, someone may still have to handle your financial affairs. And if you're not smart enough to put those different um, forms in place, making the right preparation, someone else will now hold that debt, where they're unable to maybe grieve for you during your time of loss, because now I'm stressed because I have to pick up this burden that you left because you weren't knowledgeable enough to know what's necessary. So it's a long-term game, but we need to start in increments, small increments, and it can start as young as elementary school students. Cause and effect. If you have this, you can get this. If you do this, this could be the consequences. So there's no reason why small conversations can't happen. Even games. If you find a way for me to save X amount of dollars in the next 2 weeks, you can have that money. Now, if I'm an inquisitive child, I'm going to look because I know I want some Roblox money. So I'm going to find a way for you to save money. And now it's something that conversation is happening in the household. So it can happen at home and then as well as in the school.
Thank you very much. I'm going to come to you before I take my bit, because I want to hear from an administrator. Um, what conditioning in class? I mean, that was old school. You tell the kid to repeat. Would that work for financial planning, financial illiteracy? So, what practical methods can we, develop? Can we use to make sure that these kids actually get this lifelong skill?
To piggyback a little, you have to really bring people in that kids know. We bring in our local bankers. They help us. And right now, I'm extremely fortunate. The CFO for our school district is 53 and he's retiring a millionaire. And I have him come in and speak to my kids. Now he's a teacher type, okay? And they say, "No, you can't have $1 million." And his sister is graduating with about a million, excuse me, is getting to retire. She's a year younger than him with about $1.5 million.
Well,
They're 52 and 53. And so I have him talk to the kids and they say, "Well, how do you do that?" And he said, "Because from the time I was 8 or 9, every time my parents gave me an allowance, they took 10% of it back. And I watched it grow." And he said they ingrained that for me. Because, see, it's hard to start telling a high school kid to save 10%, but when they're young, it just becomes a thing that you do. And he said, the more money I made, there was still 10%. When I had a nice little lump sum of money, I learned to start investing. And he said, it's not that I never slipped up, but here are those results. And then the big kicker is, and he said, and by the way, I don't have to live on that $1 million because I also have my pension for the last 30 years that I've worked for. And we haven't even talked about that. So he said, I gave up a little. Maybe I'm not as well traveled and going to Europe and everything else. But he really looks them in the eye and he says, I can do whatever I want to do. I can have a comfortable life. My child came out of college with no debt. My wife came out with no debt. I came out with no debt. And we have become a society where we think, a lot of people say you're going to die owing somebody, but it doesn't have to be. And what we don't realize is usually our loved ones are the ones who have to take care of things. Because when we put things in our will, like my daughter's going to take care of this and my daughter's going to take care of that, and you think your daughter's going to have that money, um, they may be paying off your bills. Do you want to close us out? We got the high sign.
Oh, okay. So, for a school owner, it's been. I like the fact that you've taken it experiential, and like we said, conditioning doesn't work anymore. So, what are we doing? We're still pioneering a program where you give the kids some money. Um, we still use naira, so we give the kids maybe 10,000 naira, and we tell the kids in the next 6 weeks you're going to be playing a game. Whoever comes out with the highest amount of money wins the game. And every week we tweak the game. So in the first week, you just drop a budget. What would you do? Set up a business, and you can ask any teacher. You can consult the internet. You can whatever you need to do just to show that you're growing your money. Um, and then at some point we introduce a bank, and we say you can actually take a loan from the bank. And at some point we introduce interest rates. So you take a loan from the bank, it has implications you know at some point we get them to understand that you can actually partner with a fellow business in class, and um, we get to see what the implication is of that is. So for every week you tweak the game, and you see the implication of the tweak in the game. Sometimes when the interest rates go up, it works against you. Sometimes stocks fall, it works against you. Sometimes it works for you. There's one thing my dad insisted on. It was the fact that he would allow you make your mistakes. So we never did it in such a way that you couldn't make mistakes. We allowed the kids make mistakes. He allowed us make mistakes. So, and when you make a mistake, most of the time, you'd find out that your money really falls. For kids, it could feel bad. So the question is, how do you bounce back from that? Do you just give up, or do you take yourself from where you are and start to build it up again? And at the end of I was when we were having this conversation, I was telling them that you would hear some very brilliant ideas on how we would go about this. Um, and for us, that's how we're introducing them into financial literacy, um, against just talking about it in class. We think this is very important, and we think it's something that all schools should begin to look into. All schools should begin to take seriously. Get the kids right from right from early years introduced to budgeting, into savings, into creating your expense account, and all of the various basic things that we need to do. Is there one more thing you want to say before we close this out?
I think I want to say thank you. And if you don't have these things happening in your community, be that voice that goes to your districts and say, our kids need to learn this so the next generation will be better off than we are. So
Alicia?
thank you.
Alicia?
I I piggyback as well. I say thank you for this opportunity, and I just encourage you to make smart financial decisions because your decisions affect the generations ahead of you as well as behind you.
The cost outweighs the benefit. Benefit outweighs the cost. It's it's huge when the kids don't know. They just get into the same challenges that we have toiled and suffered. Let's help them get out of that. Let's give them a head start. Let's help them know how to put one step up in front of the other and do better than we did. I think that's it for us. We're out of time. So,
Thank you.
ladies and gentlemen,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you very much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everyone.
Thank you so much to our panelists for that enlightening session.